Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'll give my usual rundown of Prime Minister's questions where, as predicted, given that Suella Braverman is still in post, Starmer used this ill-advised, though politically necessary, appointment to attack Sunak's vaunted integrity, and then Ian Blackford attacked his honour. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So yes, Rishi Sunak made a big play of wanting to bring integrity back to government when he became Prime Minister. A welcome relief to some, after both Boris Johnson and Liz Truss had badly damaged the reputation of government. But did he mean it? Now, being fair, there are some signs he may have meant it. The new Attorney General, for example, Victoria Prentice, you may not know much about her, but this is an appointment that has been widely welcomed by prominent lawyers. The role of Attorney General is essentially to make sure the government receives robust legal advice in order to avoid breaking the law. Under Johnson especially, but also Truss, the Attorney General was appointed to be someone who would willingly lie about the legal situation in order to allow the government to break the law, but telling ministers that it's fine, it's all legal. Prentice is not to believe to be that sort of person. She's respected. It's believed she will carry out her role with honour. So Sunak scores a win on the integrity stakes there. It also has to be said, with the immigration row that's blown up, and was the focus of Starmer's questions, that both Priti Patel and Suella Braverman deliberately ignored legal advice to secure suitable accommodation for asylum seekers undergoing the claims process. However, in the last few days that Grant Shapps was Home Secretary, he actually did his job. So when Braverman was sacked the first time, and before she was appointed the second time, Grant Shapps was the Home Secretary, and he was actually telling officials to sort out the accommodation. The new Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, who's an ally of Sunak's, is also effectively bypassing the Home Secretary and starting to sort this out himself as well. So despite Braverman's behaviour, there are signs that Sunak was trying to navigate around her and do what he could politically to make sure that his government observes a few basic standards at least. That being said, the fact that a loose cannon with zero regard for the law or even common decency is still Home Secretary is a massive blow to Sunak's claims of integrity. Like, we may know on a practical level that Sunak was effectively bounced into this situation, but make no mistake, it was only because he was so desperate to become Prime Minister. He could sack Braverman. He's got the authority to sack Braverman. Now, if he did that, maybe her ERG backers and others on the right of the party would act to bring his government down. Maybe that would force a general election. You can see how Sunak would want to avoid that, but he could do it. What he's doing is choosing the tentative stability of his party over the integrity of his government. And in that regard, is he doing anything very much different to Boris Johnson or Theresa May before him? It's his political choice. So even if you believe that Sunak would, under ideal conditions, like to pursue a government guided by some level of integrity at least, he's not prioritising it over his control of the party. And that's why Sunak was all over the place with Starmer's questions today. It's not just that Sunak had no good response to the questions. It's that Sunak didn't believe his own defence. I've said this before about the difference between Johnson and Truss. Johnson was a fantasist. Well, he still is. He can lie so confidently because his brain is able to merge his fantasies with his perceptions of reality until they become the same thing in his head. So when he lies, there are times when he sort of believes it. So it can be very convincing, even when talking absolute tosh. Truss didn't have this capacity. This is why she was so awful in interviews and debates. She couldn't believe her own lies. So she came unstuck all the time. Sunak's got the same issue. In fact, in some ways, it's an even worse problem. He's brighter than Truss, so he is more effective at evasions. He's not going to stutter and and all the time when he suddenly realises he's trapped. But his brain rebels against the nonsense he's having to spout to defend the continuation of Braverman in his cabinet. She's dishonest. She's got no respect for the law. She's got no respect for conservative values. She isn't even competent. I mean, that's the thing. She's not even competent. She's useless. She was apparently a decent enough lawyer in her field before becoming a politician, but as a cabinet minister, hopeless. Starmer's first question was to note that the Home Secretary herself said the asylum system was broken. He asked Sunak, well, who broke it then? Sunak tried to talk about his party's record in immigration and then talking about the fact his party gave people a referendum on Brexit, which I thought, well, that's not a good move. His party's record on immigration is of rising immigration, higher than when Labour were in power and we were in the EU. So if the Tories are trying to attract people who think lower immigration is good, this is not a good line to take. Also, as the Daily Mail often gleefully points out, the asylum seekers we're talking about, and whether you agree they're genuinely seeking asylum or dishonest economic migrants, doesn't matter. They're coming from outside the EU. So trying to tie it in somehow with the EU membership's freedom of movement rules, as Sunak did, that's not going to work. So Starmer came back by asking how the situation could be anyone's fault but the government's. Again, this idea of, oh, they blame everyone but themselves, blame everyone but themselves. Sunak tried to respond by saying, well, Labour voted against the Nationality and Borders Bill. And this was a common trick of Johnson's. You know, you claim a bill's going to do a thing. Oh, well, we've got this plan to do this thing, but you wouldn't support it. You know, so when Labour say the government's failing on this thing, Johnson would just say, well, you voted against this bill. You know, and what? That doesn't deal with it, because there's two problems with this. The first problem is that Labour will just say the bill was shite and wouldn't work, as Starmer actually did with Sunak here. He didn't call it shite, but words to the effect. Second, the bill passes without Labour votes anyway, because the government have got a large majority. Don't matter how Labour vote. And then when it still doesn't solve the problem once it's passed into law, where do you go then? The Nationality and Borders Bill is now the Nationality and Borders Act. It's in force. It's there. So if the Tories try to claim that asylum is still broken, say, in a year's time, and Sunak said this bill would deal with it, where does he go then? All he's doing is giving Starmer an open goal to later on say, so, you know, when he tries to attack Labour for not supporting the bill, Labour will just say, we told you it was shite. You passed it a year ago. Don't work, did it? Didn't work. Again, I mean, he won't say shite. He'll use different words. You know, Starmer then asked how many asylum claims have been processed from people arriving on small boats last year. This is where Sunak actually started to break down a bit. He hesitated. He tried to go in one direction and then he had to move in another. He just doesn't have the bluster skills of Johnson. And he could see what was happening. He could see the trap. He just weakly had to say, not enough. Not enough's been processed. And I don't know if he was hoping that Starmer would just move on to something else. But that was almost a white flag. No bombast about COVID or Russian aggression or, you know, excuse, like Johnson would have done. Not enough. Sorry, not enough. Yeah, we didn't do well on that one. My goodness. So Starmer gave him the answer, of course. He wasn't moving on. 4%. 4% of claims processed. He said that according to the bookies, the Home Secretary has got a better chance of becoming Prime Minister than processing an asylum claim in a year. And then he turned back to Braverman and he asked if she'd received legal advice that she should move people out of the Manston Immigration Centre. Sunak said that as a former Director of Public Prosecutions, Starmer should know about the policy of disclosing legal advice. But he did say that people are being moved out. And like I said, his Immigration Minister Jenrick is dealing with that now. But the point is that the Home Secretary was stopping it. But Starmer seized on Sunak's reference to him being DPP. He said that when he was in the role, he prosecuted people smugglers. Sunak left a wide open goal there. Like the Tory media and some Tory MPs keep trying to paint Labour as being on the side of the people smugglers. Sunak just gave Starmer the opportunity to show that he hasn't just opposed the trade with words, but deeds in his past career. Very careless. Basically, Starmer being a former top prosecutor, that's a big trump card for Labour on the old law and order stakes. And he brings it up quite a lot. He knows it's a good trump card for Labour, so he brings it up. Tories would be well advised not to do so themselves. It always backfires. Starmer then continued by saying that Sunak refuses to admit that Braverman ignored legal advice, that he made a grubby deal to put her in office. Then Sunak fell back to his last resort, the one he tried and failed to use last week. But Starmer wanted Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister, who wanted to scrap the armed forces and withdraw from NATO. Well, this was both weak and stupid. Weak because, just as with last week, bringing up Corbyn, I mean, what's the purpose of it? What are you trying to do here? That's working against people who didn't vote Labour last time because they really didn't want Corbyn to be Prime Minister. They were really put off by Jeremy Corbyn. Okay. Those people existed. There were people who voted Conservative or at least didn't vote Labour just because they wouldn't vote for Corbyn. Okay, fine. He's not there anymore. All Sunak's doing now by bringing up Corbyn, just like when Johnson used to do, is just reminding those same voters that he's no longer even a Labour MP, let alone the leader. All he's doing is reminding those same voters that there's now no reason not to vote Labour. Stupid. Also, the Labour manifesto that Corbyn promoted had sections on support for the armed forces and a robust commitment to NATO. It's there in black and white. I mean, we know his personal views on these matters, but his government would have been committed to maintaining them. I mean, even Dan Hodges of the Daily Mail, who tried to big up Sunak's performance last week, couldn't do so this week. Like I say, it's not just that Braverman's continued time in office can't be justified to any watching voters. It's that Sunak can't even justify it to himself. He did do a grubby deal, as Starmer said. That's the only reason she was ever made Home Secretary. He appointed an ally to a more junior position in her department to try and clip her wings a little bit. That's because he knew she was unsuitable. He knows that he'll struggle to claim to be acting with integrity on any matter if he can't claim it on all matters. And then from integrity to honour. So Ian Blackford of the SNP pointed to Sunak's promise to keep benefits in line with inflation and maintain the pension triple lock. He noted that this promise was not being confirmed of late, and he asked if the Prime Minister would keep his word. Sunak tried to deflect with talk of the autumn budget statement coming up, but Blackford noted that Sunak had not given a straight answer to the question. He said it was a Tory political choice to penalise the poor. He said that windfall taxes and scrapping non-dom status should be used. Why won't he commit to raising benefits in line with inflation? And Sunak just responded by saying, well, we did put windfall taxes in place on North Sea oil producers, which is also a little bit weak. I mean, in the spring, he did eventually, after denying a lot that he was going to, he said, no windfall taxes, no windfall taxes, no windfall tax. All right, a little windfall tax. He eventually applied a bit of one, but it was fairly pathetic. It's like when we take the dogs for a walk, right? If they have a piss or a crap on the walk, they get a little treat. It was all part of our training to stop them doing it inside, right? But my partner's soppy, she'll still insist on giving them the treat. Now, if Walter, he likes his treats. If he's already had a piss recently, right, on the walk, he'll still try really hard to do one, just so he gets his treat. Sometimes he'll squeeze with all his might and a little dribble will come out, just for the sake of the treat. That's what Sunak's spring windfall tax was. It was a token dribble for the treat of pretending to the public that not all of the burden of his budget was on the poor. He and Hunt will undoubtedly do the same thing later this month. It'll be a budget where they claim everyone needs to pay a bit of a share of this. Everyone's in it. In reality, it'll be the poorest bearing the brunt as usual. So Sunak's attempts to claim he's acting with integrity are completely shot because of his behaviour over Braverman. And as soon as that budget statement is made, we'll almost certainly discover that he's broken his word as well. So there goes his honour. Sunak may want people to think that the Tories have moved on from sleaze and dishonesty, but it is still flourishing under his government. Even if there are some genuine efforts to curtail it a little bit. But let us be honest, the bar that Johnson and Truss set was not a particularly high one. He should be able to leap over it, not just crawl over it. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships, and until next time, I'll see you later.